Hello and welcome to Stop Doing That, a podcast about people who, in one way or another, were informed that it is time to stop. My name is Andrea, pronouns she and her,
My name is
John.
pronounced he and him.
and we're in mixed spirits as we bring to you the fourth episode of our show about strange people and their antics. Before we get started, I think it is important for us, as two very average Americans, to address the current position of the world. Today's topic is about a man from Iran, and we would be remiss if we did not address upfront the actions of February 28th, 2026. On the last day of February 2026, the United States and Israel launched a coordinated attack against the nation of Iran. The claim is a preemptive strike against a hostile regime. The truth is plain to see. Two highly polarizing world leaders, Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, have made war against a Middle Eastern power that is frequently used as a nebulous boogeyman to scare white people. These two power-hungry men are scared of the justice that is coming to them as their power structures unravel. They are scared and lashing out in the only way they know how, by killing innocent people. There are 93 million people, most of them innocent civilians, who live, love, work, and relax every day in Iran. They are not their government, and we, average people, know this. I cannot bear to know the suffering of those who have already lost friends, family, those who learned that their children, young girls, had been killed in the targeting of an attack. 100 girls are dead, and we must all live with the facts of who has ordered this and why they have done it. I originally had a funny intro here, but I feel that it would have been too hard of a shift to do in this tone. We will still try to make jokes. We'll still try to have fun with our show. When we laugh here, we are laughing at the antics of one man, and we hold heavy in our hearts the losses for many.
Alright, well done there, Andrea. Yeah, obviously, fucked up situation. But that's just the way the news goes right now. People just do horrific, awful things because of power and money. It is. Yep.
And I don't think, obviously, there's things that I think other more corporate podcasts would say here. We will mention the bad side of the Iranian regime in this episode. I don't think I need to, despite the fact that I'm standing on a soapbox, I don't think I need to moralize and say, oh, but the Iranians are bad too. There is no justification for what is going on.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
As this is our fourth episode, I thought I would bring us a guy who has so far done the same thing 4 times. He will be a bit of a lighter, it'll be a bit of a lighter subject than I know sort of your 2 episodes have been. There's not exactly a whole lot of corporate greed or emotional abuse in this episode.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to be talking about a man named Reza Baluchi, or as I like to call him, Zorb Guy. So first...
Fantastic name.
Well, first, we must ask, what is Zorb?
Does it involve orbs?
It might. It just might.
All
so
right.
a Zorb, for those who have not encountered one in the wild, is an inflated plastic ball with a central cavity. So think of it like a sphere with its center removed. It's kind of like a human dumpling. If
they had these at Action Park. I remember.
Oh yeah, that's right. They did.
Yeah, because when I wrote my book about Action Park, I had to deal with these fucking things, and they are well, they almost had them at Action Park. They actually got rid of them very. They had the rides set up, and then it almost killed a man, so they got rid of it.
Which, I mean, the fact that it almost killed a man is very antithetical to the idea of the Zorb. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, it is 2 layers of high strength plastic, and between them is the inflated space. It it's actually fairly puncture resistant, and it's meant to act as a cushion for the occupant. Um, the occupant is either like strapped in place inside the orb, or they're left to sort of roll freely about the cabin. Um, some of the first instances of the Zorb are actually back from the 1980s, 1970s and 80s, with a group called the Dangerous Sports Club. Do not worry, they will be receiving their own episode.
great.
It's
Love
there.
them.
I did a little bit of research into them, and they were wild up until they weren't.
I mean, they're called the Dangerous Sports Club. That's like the perfect name for a dangerous sports club.
So what about the subject of our episode today? Our man Reza. Where does he come into this? So he was, according to his own website, runwithreza.com, he was born in 1972. The general consensus is the city of Rasht in northern Iran, though he never makes it explicit. This is sort of guessing. According to his own website, again, Reza's father was a rice farmer. We have no evidence to dispute this. You'll see why I'm qualifying it in a second. And Reza himself claims that he began working to earn a living at about the age of 8 as a vehicle mechanic. Small hands able to get into tight spaces. It's actually fairly useful.
Yeah,
I'm not
can see it.
I will have to say I am not condoning child labor.
Yeah, just because they have small hands doesn't mean. I mean, that's the sort of justification they use for child labor. Their hands are small, so they can put their hands into the
That
factory
said, if
machines.
a child does want to engage in the process of learning about auto mechanics, I welcome it.
Yeah.
At this point, Reza got himself into running, and this is something that we'll see. He claims that he had to run about 14 miles to and from work every single day after school. For obvious reasons, I find this a little dubious.
His legs would be just destroyed from doing that like more than like 3 times.
And given the fact that, I mean, he does not specify an age, but claiming that he started doing this work as an 8-year-old, and you'll see that this is compounded upon. Reza claims as he aged to 14, that he began to take up cycling as well, and that he would bike from his home to the city of Mashhad. Well, he claims that he traveled this frequently, that this distance is 621 miles. Doing a bit of Google Maps calculation, this is actually between about 650 and 777 miles, depending on the route you take over the mountains.
Cycling that would take you
10
probably
days.
weeks. 10 days. Yeah.
If you don't stop.
Yeah, I just don't believe that. I'm sorry, Reza. I don't believe that at all.
he then claims that he, because of this experience, he would then join the Iranian national cycling team. I did not look into this claim. I probably should have. I don't know if Iran has a national cycling team or had a national cycling team at this time. But one of the notable things, at least to the New York Times, Reza would claim that he was flogged by the Iranian regime for not observing the fasting during the month of Ramadan. I'm
Sounds
not
like
going to dispute this claim.
that sounds like the Iranian regime. I'll say that.
Yes, it does. Um, at the age of 18, he would serve for a period in the Iranian army. This I believe was mandatory service. I believe Iran still does mandatory conscription for all men. But he would use this as a chance to escape. He would defect from the army, and he would manage to flee internationally to Germany. He would end up joining various different professional cycling teams, and he would compete at a professional level. At least these are his claims. At the age of 24, Baluchi claims that he began competing at Vela Roma. It is unclear what he means by this. Again, this is taken from his own website, and I spent entirely too long attempting to verify what he was talking about. There is not a cycling race or a cycling team that I could find that uses this name.
Could be a stadium, maybe.
So there is the Vela Stadium, constructed by, and I'm sure we'll talk about him at some point, Santiago Calatrava. I do not like Santiago Calatrava, if you can tell from the tone of my voice. He's not a good architect. He creates a lot of very ugly architecture. Have you been through the transit hall at Ground Zero? Calling back to episode 1.
I've never been to Ground Zero at all.
Hang on a minute.
Maybe we can ask Tanya. Maybe we can ask what Tanya had thought of it.
So there is a sports center created by Santiago Calatrava, that does use the word Vela in the name. It is not this stadium. That stadium was constructed in the 2000s.
Okay. Yeah, that...
So, it's completely unclear what Reza means when he says he competed at or with Vela Roma. No clue.
Yeah, I don't know what... I'm not liking where this is going with this guy. He seems like
Don't worry. You're picking up on a clue. You're gonna need that for later.
All right.
What is less disputed is that he would go on to do a lot of ultra marathoning and ultra cycling challenges. He would compete across just about every continent. Sort of doing a big round the world sort of deal, until he reached the United States-Mexico border in 2002. It would be here that he would apply for political asylum, and would then be held in an immigration detention center for 5 months.
That sounds like Bush. That sounds like something he would do.
Like the United States immigration system.
I mean, yeah.
But you may be picking up on the time and our man, and noting that it is 2002, and Reza is Iranian. It's not a good time. But he actually, sort of very shockingly, at least to me, makes a big go of it. In his own words, about the wake of 9/11. He says that he felt compelled to show Americans that Iranians are peaceful. And the way he would do this was his first American ultra marathon. Um, he started he started a cross country run from Los Angeles to New York, and by his own claims, managed to arrive for the anniversary of 9/11.
Good timing.
I mean, that's very purposeful timing.
I mean, yeah, I guess. I mean, you could schedule that sort of thing, I suppose.
Oh yeah. And he would follow this up again in 2007 by actually running the entire perimeter of the United States. That's about 11,720 miles in about 200 days. Overall, pretty impressive. And he was not doing this for financial gain. He's frequently donated all of this money to charities, to hospitals. Yeah, he's one of the things we'll get into is that he's never a rich man, but he is always he is at the start he is doing things for a good cause, and we'll see where it goes.
This guy is giving me kind of some vibes of like being a bit of a pathological liar to some degree.
Keep that in your mind. Keep that in your
Yeah.
mind.
Okay. All right.
So he would do several other long distance runs. A lot of them, like long distance or in extreme temperatures, in extreme climates. He's done a lot of things like up along like the Rockies and with Death Valley. He's taken a lot of risks.
Okay.
Now, if you'll recall to the end of our last episode, I promised you all the Coast Guard. And while we've talked about all of this being fairly impressive, this is all on land. So let's call the Coast Guard.
Oh no.
It is 2012. We had recently figured out how to put the economy back together. We had a president who wasn't as openly bloodthirsty. And Reza was determined to outdo the life and limb endangerment of his previous adventures by entrusting his life to the gods of the sea.
Oh, God.
Using $4,500 of his own money, obtained from working a couple of day jobs at like a hookah bar, Reza became known as Bubble Man to the residents of Newport Beach, California. He was living in about that area at the time, as best of my research could show. The hydropod, as he called it, was effectively some light metal tubing and plastic flotation containers around a Zorb.
Oh, God.
From all the pictures I could see, he was using one of like the larger commercial ones. And the metal frame. I have at least one image here further in the show notes. But basically, it's two large wheels, one on either side of the orb, and between them was set a series of metal fins, so it could basically act like a giant paddle wheel that could be moved from the inside.
I gotta say, this guy looks about exactly as I pictured him. I pictured him with a mustache, though, for some reason.
Yeah, I can see the mustache. But the general idea being that as the occupant of the pod walks forward, the whole thing rotates, and the paddles provide propulsion through the water. The theory is actually really sound, despite Reza not having a background in like maritime design or engineering, and he managed to get this thing built. Hydropod Mark One would be constructed and would prove mildly successful. Um, Reza would do a fair amount of training with it. Um, and one of the first major sort of trials of the hydropod was a trip from Newport Beach, California to Catalina Island. This is a distance of about 30 miles on mostly coastal waters, but there is a deep water section between the two areas. And he made it. He managed the entire thing, which I'll give him credit. That's, again, impressive.
Yeah, it is. It's dangerous. It's very fucking dangerous, I imagine, but it is impressive.
So having managed 30 miles in one trip, and with his background, um, Reza figured that he could tack a couple extra zeros onto the end of his goal.
Oh well.
His his first attempt, or his first major journey, would be to walk the perimeter of the Bermuda Triangle.
Also known as one of the least dangerous areas of the Atlantic Ocean.
Exactly. So this would be a journey of 3,000 miles. Um, it's for those who are less familiar with the Bermuda Triangle. It is 1,000 miles Miami to Bermuda, 1,000 miles between Bermuda and I have now forgotten the southern point of.
I think it's Cuba, isn't it?
It
No,
might be
it's not
Cuba.
Cuba. And also, I'm not kidding when I say one of the least dangerous.
Oh yeah, it is.
They've done studies of this whole thing. The whole mythos around it is just complete nonsense. It's
Oh
actually
yeah,
one of the
half the things
safer
attributed to the
areas.
Bermuda Triangle have happened outside the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah.
Um, but he would attempt a 3,000 mile journey traveling around the triangle. That's fairly, it's a decent plan. He has stops along the way, and he would determine to set off in October of 2014. Um, for the first leg, Miami to Bermuda. When interviewed by CBS News, a Mitch Frochtman, who was a resident who worked along Miami Beach, said the following quote: "I've seen a lot of things. I've seen Cuban rafts come up. I've seen people on boats come up. People without boats come up. But this was the strangest thing of all. The man was walking to Bermuda." And as he set out, as Reza set out from the beach, he immediately became a navigational hazard. I mean, go figure, a 6 foot by 10 foot construction moving at roughly about 1 to 2 knots of speed.
It would have taken him like months to get to Bermuda. Literal months.
Almost certainly, if the following had not happened.
Yeah.
He immediately became disoriented. As he headed out into open waters, he lost all sense of direction. This was then called into the United States Coast Guard, who intercepted Baluchi, who intercepted Reza, and gave him the opportunity to voluntarily end his journey.
Wonder why.
Reza would not comply with this. He in fact denied their voluntary order to end the trip. But
John,
how much do you know about the Western Atlantic?
There's a lot of hurricanes.
Okay, keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind. Um, any other things that might be aided by the big graph in the show notes?
I'm seeing what appears to be a lot of churning of the water and the wind and everything else, I guess. Sort of
Yeah,
like, yeah. I
sort of
imagine
like
that's
this.
not great.
Sort of like there's a giant underwater high-speed current that might make a slow-moving craft almost impossible to use on open waters.
No, that's just it's just 1984 talking there. Let
So,
this man walk.
so yeah. In fact, Reza had walked him and his hydropod straight into the Gulf Stream. Um, and he was swiftly being swept north. By the time that the United States Coast Guard formally ordered him to end the journey, and Reza himself had ended up setting off his emergency distress beacons. Um, he was only about 70 miles out to sea, which fairly impressive. He was, however, 185 miles north of his starting position.
Oh no. Uh,
Reza would claim that he had activated his emergency distress beacons by accident while leaning out of the hydropod to collect a case of bottled water that had been thrown to him by a passing fishing boat. Um, you will note by the grainy black and white image further down the show notes, this is rather hard for him to have done, as at this point the hydropod, uh, with Coast Guard on scene, is notably on its side.
oh no. Yeah, that it's very hard to do anything in the water when that happens to you.
Yeah, in naval and maritime parlance, we would call this a near capsizing or a listing. Um, but yeah, the hydropod was going nowhere, and the Coast Guard would end up deploying a helicopter, multiple boats, and even a C-130 aircraft, cargo aircraft to deploy rescue divers. All told, this this cost the United States government $140,000.
I mean, I'd rather my taxes go to that than to a lot of the other stuff that they use it for.
This is true, yes. Um, the the hydropod now left adrift and again a navigational hazard. Um, would be taken under tow by a salvage company. However, during the time it had been left afloat and just the general journey itself, it had sustained a fairly reasonable amount of damage and would end up sinking while under tow. Um, this would actually end up saving Reza a little bit, as he did not have to pay out to the salvage company for the recovery of his hydropod. But in discussing it, Reza said, "I'm in trouble, big trouble."
I wonder why. It's almost like he, it's almost like he got the Coast Guard called on him for doing something very reckless and stupid.
And this would actually have a little bit of a lasting discussion here in the United States. As this, along with another incident where the Navy had to intervene in the case of a seasick passenger on a sightseeing cruise, would lead to calls for those who engage in these sorts of like stunts and incidents to have to reimburse the taxpayer for the expense. because they're expending hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment and fuel and personnel time for something that is, by all regards, a fairly small issue.
Yeah.
But interestingly, of all of the groups to push back on this, it's the Coast Guard themselves who have always continuously turned down any attempt to enforce this sort of thing. Spokespeople for the Coast Guard have said that they do not want the taxpayer to be worrying that they may be forced to foot the bill if they call the Coast Guard for aid.
It's sort of like how people who are having like major health issues don't want to call an ambulance because they got to pay for it.
Exactly.
Because a couple of years ago, I had I think you might remember this. I had a major stomach illness.
I do remember that.
Yeah. I thought it was food poisoning. It wasn't. It was just straight up norovirus. I had to go to the hospital. And they had to call. It wasn't like I was dying or anything, but they called an ambulance just make it easier. And that cost, in the end, I want to say it cost like $500.
Yeesh.
Something like that for an ambulance. Yeah.
So we now have one attempt under our belt. And at this point, we shall now attempt to chart the Bermuda Triangle ourselves. Starting in Miami, on to Bermuda, and finally aiming to reach the bottom corner and the island of conversation.
Nice transition there.
Thank you. I'm doing my best.
Yeah. All right. So
I will say, given sort of the unrelenting horrors of the world, I will try to keep us off of serious topics.
Yeah, I'll try to do that too. Yeah.
If you have something fun, please let us hear it.
So, going back to what I discussed last week, Artemis 2. I did hear that they are now pushing the launch of the of Artemis 2 to, I think, April. They've also reorganized the mission structure. So what they're going to do now is Artemis 3 which was going to be a mission to the moon, put astronauts on the moon. That was supposed to take place next year. That's now going to be Artemis 4. And Artemis 3 is just going to be a normal low Earth orbit mission.
Huh.
And this will be related to the episode that I'll be doing next week, by the way.
So is Mission 2 still going around the moon?
It's still going around the moon for now, anyway. I wasn't holding my damn microphone. The Artemis 2 might end up being the low Earth orbit mission, because it does seem like they're having some major problems with this machine.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like entering, like, doing the around the moon mission and then doing the low Earth orbit mission feels like you're doing it a little bit out of order.
It does, yeah. What I've heard is just a lot of the reason is just because a lot of the Artemis rocket just is apparently kind of just the space shuttle, but just sort of remodeled in a certain way. It's sort of like a weird Frankenstein monster of a rocket and a space shuttle.
Huh.
And which it does not seem great. I mean, you're talking about the space shuttle, which
A machine that famously worked perfectly 100% of the time.
yeah, if it's a part of growing up. A part of as a child, you think the space shuttle was awesome. Growing up is understanding that the space shuttle was complete dog shit. was just it was awful at everything. It was so bad.
Well, it wasn't awful at looking cool.
It wasn't awful at looking cool. It did look very, very, very cool. Um, I still watch videos of that thing taking off, and it is quite majestic. But I do it with the understanding that that machine will explode if you just look at it wrong. So, what about you? Do you have any topics for us?
I don't have any like newsworthy topics. I will say, however, you and I are both well, you are my motorsports person. Um
Correct.
though we do both enjoy racing, some topics related to racing. And I would say we both agree that rally is sick as fuck.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I do.
Um
Yeah.
so I'll ask you this. Does the name Rosemary Smith mean anything to you?
No, I have never heard that name before in my entire life.
Oh, because she's awesome. This has been a recent like micro obsession for me since I was learning about like various random things. Racing has come up in this episode. Um and I was learning about the I believe it's 1966.
I'm looking her up now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, the 1966 Monte Carlo rally disqualifications. Um but she was an Irish rally driver. Um and just the fact that I'm bringing her up because she will not have her own episode. Um there was never a point at which someone told her it's time to stop.
or at
And she
least, or at least she shouldn't have stopped. She should have kept going.
Oh yeah. Um and it's amazing to learn that there's just this random Irish woman who is like, yeah, you need a navigator for a rally? Sure, I'll help. Turns out she's a terrible navigator, but a great driver.
If
And
you if you're curious about stuff like that, I suggest you look up Michelle Mouton. She
oh,
was a she was a rally driver in the 1980s. This was in the Group B era where the rally cars were just like insane. 500 horsepower, faster than your brain can comprehend. And she almost won the world championship. She came very, very close to winning it. She's generally regarded as being the
oh
greatest,
no.
the
Oh
greatest.
no, you should not have done this to me. Oh dear. Oh no. Everything, listeners, everything is normal. I'm doing fine right now. Oh
Yeah,
no.
yeah. She's an inspiration. She is genuinely an incredible.
She's quite pretty too.
She was known for that. Yeah, she was quite known for being attractive, but she was an incredible driver. She's widely regarded as being the greatest woman racing driver of all time.
Um the one of the parts of Smith's career that I found really interesting was that after sort of her major retirement uh from rally, uh she decided that she was just going to go back to Ireland and start a driving school. Not like
I
a
mean,
rally
yeah.
driving school, but just a regular driving school?
I mean, it's tangentially related, I guess. You gotta have something to do. But
Yeah. It reminds us that we can live a life of adventure and then go on to do something worthwhile.
even if it go on to do something even rather mundane and still enjoy it.
All right. So that has been the conversation corner. Uh,
All right.
so so let us reinflate the Zorb and roll onto the waves, only to be rescued once more from certain death by the United States Coast Guard.
Oh boy. That's what we
April
need.
2016.
Our favorite year. Thank God.
In the 2 intervening years between from his first attempt, Reza has taken to the sea. He is learning the waves, and working to make some capital for his next adventure by working on a crabbing boat out of Florida. He claims to have accumulated about $20,000 for the next hydropod. And when the Coast Guard got wind of this, they immediately drafted and sent a letter to Reza threatening him with a fine of $40,000 and imprisonment if he attempted to utilize it again.
Oh, come on, Coast Guard. Let the man take his trip. You know, at some point you gotta just let people, you know, touch the stove with their hand.
He's
You know,
already touched the stove.
well, he doesn't seem to have learned yet, so maybe you gotta let him do it again. A second time, maybe a third, fourth, fifth. You know how many times it takes for him to get, stove's pretty hot.
Well, following one false start, Reza announced a plan to make a round trip around the Caribbean. Um, he would start from Jacksonville, Florida, then go on to Bermuda as before, then on to Haiti, Cuba, Puerto Rico, and Key West, before returning to his launching point at Pompano Beach.
That somehow sounds even less realistic than going around the Bermuda Triangle.
It is a longer distance. Um, 2 days later, he would be intercepted by the United States Coast Guard, having made less headway than the first time. Um, Having only drifted about as far north as Jupiter, Florida, which is not as far. Um, the Coast Guard came aboard, inspected the craft. Um, they they found that some things were not in order, and the hydropod was towed ashore. The Coast Guard politely asked him to refrain from doing this again. They did not attempt to enforce their threat.
Try
And
being nice about it.
July, using some of the remaining funds, Reza hired a boat to tow the hydropod into international waters. I'm assuming that he thought surely the Coast Guard would not notice him there.
Really?
The guard swiftly intercepted them and elected this time to do a full inspection of the hydropod as if it were any other registered watercraft. It should be noted that under Florida law, the hydropod does not have to be registered as a watercraft. It is only 6 feet long by 10 feet wide. So it's not a true boat. It does not fall under the classification there.
It's sort of like the Reliance. Sort of like
it,
the Reliance Robin a bit, where it's technically a motorcycle, not a car.
Yes, Reza has done like the proper paperwork for his hydropods several times. he would put them down as homemade boats. And the Coast Guard found that Reza lacked a fire extinguisher. The one that he had on board was not properly charged, and so Reza was forced back ashore. One trip to Walmart later, and they would manage to launch the hydropod from the support boat off the coast of Jupiter, Florida. This time, under the direct supervision of the Coast Guard.
So, like, they just followed him, basically?
Yes, they started following him immediately.
I guess they were, like, just waiting for, like, something to go badly wrong.
Well, so when night fell on the first day, so on the scene they had cutter USCGC Robert Yared. I have a note here. I forgot I wrote this note of quote, "Do not get into cutter classification, you insufferable nerd."
I don't even know what that is.
I'm going to obey the note, and we're not going to talk about U.S. Coast Guard cutters. We'll talk about them at some other point. Interestingly enough, the Robert Yared's Wikipedia page does not contain any images or a notation of the rescue of Reza Baluchi, which I think is a shame. The Coast Guard were already on scene with a reasonably sized vessel, and they ordered Reza to stop. Their direct command was, "This voyage has been terminated." Reza would then spend 3 days becalmed alongside the Yared. He was refusing to come out of the pod. And eventually they would manage to take Reza, they would manage to convince him out of the pod, and take him back ashore for a psychiatric medical evaluation.
I wonder why.
The Coast Guard, now with the hydropod cleared, elected for the target practice route and opened fire on the hydropod, puncturing enough of the buoyancy chambers for it to sink.
Oh my god. They blew up the hydropod.
They did not blow it up. The Yared does not possess enough firepower to actually blow up the pod, but they did sink it.
But come on, come on. That would be... That belongs in a museum.
It's unclear to me if they mean that, like, a few Coast Guardsmen were assembled, like, on the quarterdeck to fire on the, Alright, I shouldn't say the quarterdeck, the weather deck, to fire on the hydropod with rifles, or if they turned the boat, the ship's 25mm Bushmaster chain gun on the hydropod. But I have to presume it was a good time had by all. We do not know the actual, like, results of this psychiatric evaluation, but keep in mind the things prior mentioned, the somewhat outlandish claims and other, dubious facts about Reza's life.
Yeah, alright.
2021. Presumably believing that open water was the only place to escape COVID quarantines, Reza planned another attempt, aiming for the one place this podcast seemingly cannot escape.
Yeah.
New York City.
New York.
His stated goal was to raise money for essential first response services. So police, fire departments, and yes, the United States Coast Guard.
Well, at least he doesn't hold any grudges. You give him that.
In the intervening 5 years, Reza had made a bunch of improvements to the hydropod design. Um, he had included a satellite phone, a water filtration system, a solar power array. He had neoprene wetsuits in the event that bad weather came up. He was starting to learn. And he had with him a solid stockpile of granola and ramen noodles for sustenance, though I suspect only carbs would not have gotten him too far.
How's he gonna cook the ramen?
That I do not know.
Is he just gonna eat it raw? Just just bite down on the block?
I hope not. So this time, as we previously mentioned, the Gulf Stream is a thing. And instead of trying to cross it, he would end up trying to work with it, using it to aid his journey northwards. He somehow ended up 30 miles south of his starting location.
Oh boy.
When he would wash ashore in Flagler County, Florida, and he would be intercepted by the local police. As when pressed as to why he had brought the hydropod ashore on the beach, Reza would claim that his backup GPS and its charging cable had been stolen. This claim, to me, it stops just shy of Reza claiming outright sabotage.
By who?
I have no clue.
Was he working with anyone?
No. It seems to be. Presumably, it might have been the Coast Guard attempting to sabotage it.
Yeah, they snuck into his house or whatever, or wherever he was keeping his hydropod, and just stole it, just saying, "We got you now, asshole."
So, this being the third time, the Coast Guard finally actually took, an attempt at, pressing Reza on some of these violations. He would be charged with, this is a federal charge, in violation of Captain of the Port orders. I am not, despite being a naval girly, I will live and die by the surface fleet. I cannot truly and wholly explain to you Captain of the Port orders. As best I understand them, they are the Coast Guard's way of saying, I find what you're doing unsafe, and I'm going to take action to make you stop. It's really like the ocean-going equivalent of saying, my house, my rules. And that flexibility of it is kind of useful, as it lets, as these are sort of determined by, so the captain of the port, or we would generally also refer to them as a harbor master, is frequently the sector commander of the Coast Guard. And, captain of the port, COTPs, those rules change port to port. So it's different sector to sector, and there might be rules in one place that are not enforced in another, or vice versa, because of locality. So if I launched a boat nearby to me, I would be under one jurisdiction. If I were to take it north, say onto the Great Lakes, I would be under a different captain of the port order, captain of the port, and those orders would be different. This is really useful. No two small ports are the same, and safety has to be enforced differently. This is frequently used as a way to shut down like illegal charter boat operations, because they also have the ability to enforce like state law and those sorts of like charter licenses are handed out at the state level. That's about as best as I understand it. And for this, the Coast Guard would threaten Reza with a fine of $95,881 for this stunt.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. And upon the loss of a third hydropod and a fairly sizable chunk of his funding, Reza told a reporter, "Now I am dead. I do not have a car. I put everything in my life in it."
Why? Why would you do that? Why would you put your money in this?
2023.
Christ.
Presumably in a bid to escape the return of Donald Trump, Reza planned his most daring crossing yet. Miami to London.
It's even worse.
4,000 miles of open ocean in a Zorb.
You would think he would at least get, okay, maybe I shouldn't do a 2,000-mile journey. How about let's start with 200 miles, then maybe 400, then maybe 700. No, he's just going even longer, even bigger. It's just, God almighty.
The Coast Guard, now wise to Reza's nonsense, intercepted him about 70 miles from the coast of Tybee Island, Georgia, and they ordered him to show registration documents. Again, as this was a homemade boat and not subject to Florida laws on boat registration, Reza did not have these because it's a Zorb. And so the Coast Guard launched a small boat and ordered Reza to surrender and leave the Zorb. It is at this point that Reza pulled out a 12-inch long knife and threatened to kill himself.
Huh. That's an escalation.
See?
Jeez.
I told you the prior mental health examination would come back to us.
Oh my god.
The Coast Guardsman immediately backed off, recognizing, this is a threat of suicidal ideation. We're gonna back off.
Yeah, they're not built for that. They're not built for that sort of thing.
The Coast Guard would return the next day, hoping that perhaps a night at sea would get Reza to calm down. Upon approaching the Zorb again, Reza pulled out the first knife. He then pulled out a second knife. He then grabbed a pair of wires that were connected to something in the hydropod and claimed to have a bomb on board.
This is a major escalation. Like the first 3 times or 4 times, whatever it was just him being a nuisance, and now it's just straight up, I'm gonna take you all down. I'm gonna go down with this ship, and I'm gonna take you all with me.
Yeah. I can only presume that the findings of that mental health exam were really bad. And as a girl who has been examined for her own mental health, I can tell you it's not a fun experience.
And they probably should have taken action then and there.
Yeah.
Before he hurt himself like this.
So the Coast Guard would, again, back off because, this man has 2 knives and potentially an explosive device. They did, however, have one trick up their sleeve. And that was, in fact, not a trick at all. So you recall how you mentioned that the Western Atlantic is pretty famous for its hurricanes?
Correct. Yeah. They tend to
Well,
get them.
well, one was bearing down on them.
Oh boy.
The
Great timing.
on the third day, the Coast Guard would arrive with fresh food and water for Reza, and they brought with them, the rather important little tidbit, that Hurricane Franklin would be on top of them fairly shortly if he did not surrender. And if he did not attempt to end this attempt to cross the Atlantic, he would almost certainly be killed. It seems that the news of a hurricane actually snapped Reza to his senses, as he did then surrender.
He realized, oh, I don't actually want to die for this. That would maybe not be great.
It's unclear whether he was forced to stay in the Zorb, or it's more presumable that he was then taken aboard the U.S. Coast Guard vessel that was brought to intercept him. And the hydropod was then tied off and towed back to shore. The U.S. Navy's Explosive Ordnance Disposal Unit was deployed, and it was at that point that Reza admitted the bomb that he claimed to have had on board was in fact fake.
Really? Was it really fake? Oh, Reza. This is,
So now, fully sick of Reza's shit, the Coast Guard slapped him with another violation of Captain of the Port and ordered him to appear in federal court for a hearing. He was put on $250,000 worth of bond, and a court order that he may not go to the ocean or board a vessel onto the ocean. Rivers are acceptable. Lakes are fine. But the ocean...
Not the ocean.
He is allowed nowhere near it. As of this date, that trial has not yet happened. Or else we would end our story with that. I will say he has been pretty quiet. The last update to his website was a Christmas event back in 2014. Naturally, all of the art and assets for it are notably AI generated.
Are they?
Most of the actual photos on his website are now broken.
I'd be disappointed, frankly, if they weren't AI generated. That is just perfectly on brand for him.
And it is unclear how many people attended what was billed as a reindeer run, as again, this was Christmas themed. So that is Reza Baluchi, a man who, when I spoke to a friend of mine who does like marathons and cycling, and I described his antics, he looked at me and said, "Yeah, all of that is perfectly normal for an ultramarathoner."
Huh.
He's described his own, the other people, so the more extreme ends of his community as, completely insane.
Yeah, I mean, these kinds of extreme sports people can be just fucking bananas sometimes.
So that is our episode for the day.
John.
What can the listeners expect from our next episode?
Well, I mentioned the Artemis rocket. That will be a topic that comes up. We're not going to be talking about New York. I will say that. There's no New York.
Thank God.
In fact, we're not really even talking about Earth. We're going somewhere in the stars. I'll just leave it at that. I'll leave it at that from now on.
Well, listeners, I am now intrigued, and hopefully you are too, and that you will join us for the next episode of Stop Doing That.
We'll see you next time, dear listeners, as we tell people that it is time to give it a rest.
It is, in fact, time to stop doing that.